Let's secure our interface. Each change we make to our system in this course is either focused on keeping the bad guys out or limiting their impact if they happen to get in. The first change we're making is the latter. We're lessening the impact of malicious activity or even accidental configuration. Right now, our interface uses the read-write version of the Pi interface for OBCDA. It's possible to create a point on the Pi data archive that causes the interface to write back to the OPC server. So this means that someone with write access to the data archive can essentially make changes down in the control system. But in fact, let's draw a hacker here. As we'll see more a little later in the course, our configuration is so bad that someone wouldn't even need administrator access. Anyone that happens to be on our network could spoof a connection and make a change that writes to our control system. And all we'd see in the logs is that someone called PyAdmin created a tag. Are you scared yet? You probably should be. What's more scary is that the configuration we have right now is really common. I feel my heart sink whenever I see it in the wild. It's common because it works. If you go through and configure things so they just work in the way that's easiest to get it working, really what you have in our configuration right now is what you get. There's a reason we teach things the way we do in the basics class to prevent this from happening. We don't really give you any option but to use good security practices if you go through configuration as we did in the basics class. So in this class, we're fixing up a poorly implemented system. We're going to install the read-only version of the interface. So this version is effectively the same as the read-write version of the interface, but it doesn't have any functionality relating to writing back to the OPC server. We'll actually have two interface versions installed at the same time, a read-write and a read-only. Next, we're going to copy our configuration over from the read-write version to the read-only version. Make some minor edits to it, making it recognize that it's for the read-only version now, and then we'll load our interface into the ICU and create a new instance. We'll install its service, then stop the old one and start the new one. So all this while making sure we're still getting data. After we do all this, we'll configure disconnected startup and health tags and make sure the interface is following best practices. We're on Pi int 01. Let's take a look at our configuration before we make any changes. And, well, let's see if everything's still working. Now, we're going to open up the ICU, so interface configuration utility on Pi int 01, and take a look at our interface configuration. We select the only interface in the list, and here's how we've got it configured. Now, right now it's running as a service under the default service account, and we have a point source here. I'm going to copy this so I can use it later. And we're going to make some changes here, and best practice is to have a scrolling log open while we're doing that. So let's open that up. A little bit of paper with the Pi symbol. And there we go. Okay, let's switch over to Pi SRV 01 and see if data is actually coming in for this interface. We're going to open up System Management Tools on Pi SRV 01. So down to Pi System Management Tools, and then go into Data and Current Values. We do a tag search, and we search for all tags with a point source of our copied point source from our interface. We search, and let's select all, and OK. Here's our tags. I'm going to click on the play button, and I'm getting data through. The other thing we should check is if buffering is working. So because we're coming in and going to make some changes here, I'm really concerned that everything is working before we start making changes. So I'm going to go back to Pi int 01 and go Tools, Buffering. Here we go. looks like events are getting sent through the queue. It's getting 19 events per second now, 20 events per second. We are getting data through the queue. Okay, let's start making some changes. The first thing I'm going to do is install the read-only version of the interface. So open up PyInstallKits on the desktop of PyInt01, and we're going to right-click and run as administrator on the OPCInt read-only install kit. Don't install the PyAPI yet. We're going to do that later. Okay? So first we're going to set up the interface using the strategy in place using trusts. I'm going to click next, next, next on here, and then we're going to go and see what's happening in the PyVata archive, see how this original interface is actually getting in. Okay, we're installed. Now, before we switch over, I want to confirm that our other interface, or when we do switch over, our new interface will work security-wise. So let's go over to our data archive. And we're going to go to Operation and Network Manager Statistics. This will tell us how our different services are connecting. I'm going to scroll down and find our OPC interface. So OPCPE, here it is. Scroll along. Looks like it's getting in under a trust called PyInt01. It's being mapped to the super user PyAdmin. And this is the first part where my brain goes, oh no, danger, danger. Let's see how that's actually configured. So let's go down into security and mappings and trusts and into the trusts tab. And here is our interface trust. So PyInt01 it's called, and it maps anything coming from the machine PyInt01 to the super user. Now we're going to take a look at this a little deeper later, but this is where alarm bells are ringing here, and I'm looking at this and feeling very uncomfortable. Okay, we're going to fix it later, but when we switch over to our read-only version of the interface, it'll still work because we have this trust here letting in any connection from the interface anyway, so it doesn't really matter what we run the interface as, it'll still work. So let's go back to the interface, and we're going to switch over to the read-only version now. So there's a few steps here. I'm going to go into Windows File Explorer, down into this PC, and into D drive, and into Program Files, x86, PyPC, Interfaces. This is where our interfaces are installed. The interface binary files, all the configuration for each interface instance is in these folders. So the top one is OBCInt read-write, and the bottom one is read-only. We just installed the bottom one. So we should, if we go into OBCInt, see a configuration file for our interface instance called OBCInt1. And we see it here. It's this bat file. So what does this bat file actually do? Let's right-click and edit it. Here we go. So this is the file that's written by the ICU when we save configuration. We can see every different version that's been saved so far here. And the last line runs the obcint.exe file with a lot of different flags turned on and off. To see exactly what these flags do, read the documentation for the interface, but really they're the different bits of the ICU configuration all written into the configuration file. Okay, we're going to copy this to the OPCInt read-only folder. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to copy this OPCInt1.bat, go one file up, go into our OPCInt _read-only, and paste it here. I'm going to make some minor changes here before I open it up in the ICU and configure it further. I'm going to right click, go to Properties, and make it read write. Make the configuration file read write. I'm just about to write to it. Okay. And then right click and edit. So the final line here, we see that it's running, it's got an explicit path to the read-write version of the interface when this configuration is run. We're going to change this to the read-only version. So if we look at the file path of the read-only version, we see it is opcint_read-only is the folder name, and opcint_read-only.exe is the file name. So we can change this here. Save this, and our configuration is complete. We can close all of these, and then we can use the ICU to go to Interface, and then New Windows Interface from bat file. This creates a new interface from an already existing configuration bat file, which is what we just created. So we're going not opcint, we're going back to interfaces and opcint read only, then going into this opcint1.bat. Click on that and then open. It gets very angry with us because we've got a duplicate configuration. It's detected that both interfaces that we have loaded now, the read-only and the read-write, will both be writing to the same points. And if they both run at the same time, then you'll get duplicate data. It's okay with us. We're only going to run one at a time anyway. So, okay. Now, under the dropdown, we have two different interfaces, opcint1 and opcint1 read-only. For this read-only one, we're going to go down to Service, and we're going to leave it to log on as the default service account for now. We're going to change that a little later, and Create. Okay. Now we have both interface instances created as services. The new one's not running, but the old one is. I'm going to go and stop the old one and start the new one. So back to opcint1. I would like to save my changes. Okay, I'm going to stop the old one. And once that's stopped, navigate to opcint_read-only1 and then start. So I would have got a little bit of data loss there, about equivalent to a normal interface restart. Once that's started up, the very first thing you should do is make sure data is still flowing. So let's go back to our Pi server 01, go into our current values, and data is still flowing. We're good. Okay. We're going to go back to our interface machine and remove the old read-write interface instance. So I'm going to navigate into opcint1, then click on OK, then go Interface, delete interface instance. This will also remove the service. It asks us if we want to delete the configuration file as well. I'm going to say no, just in case we want to go back to this configuration. So it's been removed. Now we only have one interface, which is the one we want to keep. Let's make sure this is using best practices. So let's go down to disconnected startup. We're going to enable it. We're going to browse for a cache path. I'm going to leave this in the opcint read-only folder. And then I'm going to go down to health points and create the health points we want. So I'm creating the heartbeat, the device status, the IO rate, and scan skipped for scan class 0. I'll apply all this and then restart my interface. While that's restarting, we can go over to PySIV01, do another tag search, search for the same thing again. This time it'll grab the health points we just created as well. Select all and OK. Sort by tag name in reverse order, and we get the health points. So I'm pretty happy with this. Well, actually, I'm not very happy with this because it's still using that same trust that we really, really need to fix. But at least if we were to be attacked, this interface that's running right now has no ability to write back to our control system.